Welcome to our third video on the office renovation, and as you might have guessed from the intro to this video, today is going to be a lot about painting. But before we get into that, why don't we catch you up on a few things that have happened since the last video. First off, we have primed the entire room. It actually took 2 coats of primer, and I can still kind of see the paint bleeding through it, but with 2 more coats of real paint, that shouldn't be a problem. We also had the crew come in and they have now finished installing the railing on the outside balcony, so that is up and secure, so it's now safe to go out there. We finished painting the ceiling, which is what you saw in the intro, and we've also reinstalled the AC vent and put back up the light. Now with all that done, we are ready to get into some of the new stuff. So the first thing I'm going to work on is painting the closet. I typically like to paint them a bright color because it makes it easier to see stuff, it bounces light around, and this is especially true if you don't have a light inside the closet. Since in this room I want to kind of minimize the paint colors, I'm going to paint the inside of the closet the same color as I'm painting the trim, which is a white semi-gloss enamel. This will save on extra paint colors because it's the same paint I'm going to use on the trim around the closet. It's also the same paint color that we're going to use for the board and batten wainscoting, which is going to cover half the room's walls. Let's get that closet painted and move on to some other projects. Well, that finishes off the closet, and now that that's done being painted, I can actually use the closet floor in order to store all the stuff I have around this room and get to painting the rest of the area. Next on the punch list is to fix that door. Now if you remember this door, it was painted, but no one had taken the door out to paint the area that's blocked on the second panel. So we're going to remove that door right now, and we're going to take care of painting that while I have the trim paint out. Now that the inside door is painted, we'll put this door back in place and we'll move on to building the frame for the attic access. We're going to build the frame that goes around the attic access in the same way that we're going to build the wainscoting that goes into this room. So this will be good practice for that. To do this, we're going to measure the frame so we leave about 1/8 of an inch around all sides so the ladder doesn't get stuck as we pull it down. And we're going to put it together with pocket screws. Now these pocket screws will draw everything tight, much like it would if you were doing cabinet making. This will prevent that molding from expanding over time and cracking or leaving any gaps, and will leave a nice tight fit. When we do the wainscoting around the whole room, we'll do the same thing. This will hold each panel together tightly so that they look nice for a long time to come. So let's get started on that. Let's cut the wood, let's put the pocket holes in, and let's get it up on the ceiling. Now before I put the molding back around this attic entry door, I can finally say goodbye to this stupid looking washer on a string that was used to pull this down. And the reason I can do that is they make these nice poles now where you can just put a small piece of hardware on here, screw it in, and then you just use the pole, you keep it in the closet, and you pull it down anytime you need to get access. No dangling washer anymore. Nice and easy and nice and neat. The ceiling frame to go around the upstairs attic staircase is now finished. We've used pocket holes to join everything together. It's painted and ready to go up, so I'm just going to take some trim screws and start these going through so that I can actually screw it up into the ceiling, and I'll get some help and put it up there. So I'll use some construction adhesive and a few screws to mount it up, and then I'll finish off by mounting it with some trim nails. All this needs now is a little wood filler and some touch-up paint, and this will match perfectly to the wainscoting that we're going to put around the whole room. It's the best way I could think of to blend this attic access into the rest of the room and make it look reasonably aesthetically pleasing. Now that the casing's up around the attic access, most of the initial construction around the room is done, so we're ready to get back to painting. The first thing we did is we tested a few swatches around the room of this green that we're going to use to make sure that we liked it. And we're pretty happy with the color, so we're going to go ahead and paint the room. But now we're going to have to do one more thing before we get started, and that is to actually draw a line around the room where the wainscoting is going to transition into this green paint color, which will be above it. The wainscoting will be white and it will contrast with this green paint. So the first thing we're going to do, especially since I already have the trim paint out, I'm going to use the same color of the semi-gloss white enamel. It will match the trim and it will match all the wainscoting. Now the wainscoting is just going to be a frame that goes around the wall. To match that to the wood, I'm going to paint that the same semi-gloss enamel. To do that, I need to put a line around the wall that is roughly about the area where this transition occurs. Now there'll be a piece of wainscoting board that will cover this over. But before I go and install it all, I'm going to paint the top of the room the green, I'm going to paint the bottom of the room white, and I'm going to make roughly the division where it will be covered over later by the wainscoting board. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get some painting clothes on, and then we will go ahead and finish painting this room. There's no real right height when it comes to putting wainscoting in, though a lot of people will say that there is either tall or low. And that the low should be somewhere between 40 and say 42 inches to be below the light switches. The high would be above the light switches. It really just means that you can do it any way you want and to whatever taste you personally have. The one important thing is that when you measure is to give enough leeway to include the distance the floor will come off the ground. So in this case, I'm going to put 3/4 inch hardwood flooring down. So whatever I measure, I'm going to need to add 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to go ahead and mark this off. And the next step will be to put a few more marks around the whole room using a laser level. And the importance of the laser level is that it will make sure that the line is straight going across the room, regardless if the floor kind of undulates a little bit or changes in height. This way we'll base the whole entire wainscoting off that straight line, and we'll cover up any consistencies at the floor level using baseboard. Alright, we got the line snapped all the way around the room, so let's get to painting. I'm going to start by painting the semi-gloss up here, then we'll talk a little bit more about how to do the top. I got my painting clothes on and I am ready to start painting the main part of the walls, the green that will go from the wainscoting up to the ceiling. And it's a good thing I changed my clothes because, yeah, this just happened. Well, if I wasn't planning on replacing the flooring before, I am now. So we'll just keep on moving on and get onto the painting. So the most overlooked thing in painting, and probably the only good tip I'll give you in this entire video, is that when you cut the ceiling, and by cutting I mean put that line straight across between where the wall transitions to the white of the ceiling, you need to take your time, you need to do it well, because that is the difference between a good paint job and a really, really horrible paint job. There's 3 techniques I use to accomplish this. The first one is, and my personal favorite, crown molding. It hides everything. You can't see how bad it is. However, in this room I'm not able to do that because it does have a curve in the ceiling. With that said, here are the other 2 options. Option number 1 is old school, and this requires using a paintbrush, and what you do is you apply some paint close to the edge, then you load the paintbrush up and you slowly push the paint up into the corners. And if you can do a very smooth, careful line, it will look nice and tight and make a perfectly sharp transition. Method 2 is a little bit more new school. With method 2, what you do is you first tape the line from the ceiling to the wall. Then you go back and you fill it in with paintable caulk. You give that paintable caulk a little time to dry. Usually about 20 minutes is what's recommended before it's paintable. And then you go back in and you just paint over it, and you can be a sloppy mess as long as you don't pass the tape. This will cover in the edge perfectly, and then what you do is, after about 10 more minutes when the paint's a little bit dry, you just peel off the tape and you have a perfectly straight line. The only downfall to this method is if you don't have a perfectly straight ceiling, the line will look like it flutters a little bit away as it goes across the wall. However, the line will be laser sharp. Now with both methods, once you've actually cut the edges, go back and back roll over the edges with a small roller, and this will make the edges blend perfectly with the rest of the wall. And as one last tip, don't worry if you make a few mistakes and you get some on the ceiling. You can always go back later and just touch it up with a small paintbrush and some more ceiling white. Once all the edges were cut, it was pretty easy to paint the rest of the wall. I did 2 coats to make sure that there was even coverage and everything was looking good. So we'll let this dry, and while it's drying, let's take a quick look at some of the other projects that have been in progress around the house. Now, if you watch some of my other videos, you know I've been restoring this old Delta jewel press and painting it and trying to bring it back to kind of a cool, newish quality, I guess. But there's been one thing that's totally held up the project, and I could not get this nut off. It just would not come off this, and I tried tons of things. So for you Delta aficionados out there, here is how you remove the pulley nut. First off, it is a 23mm ratchet. These are not easy to find, but I was able to get one on Amazon. The second thing is it's reverse threaded. So righty is not tighty, righty is how you take it off. Now, even once I found the right socket for this, it still seemed to be jammed and stuck on. So after a couple of back and forths with some WD-40, a strap wrench to hold the pulley in place, and just kind of cranking back and forth on the socket wrench, I was able to get it to move. Now that I got the pulley nut off, the pulley should come off, but it still seems to be engaged and stuck. So if anyone knows how to get this pulley off, please leave a comment below so I can keep working on this project. The other project I've made a little progress on is framing out this wall, and this will be the future laundry room slash access prevention mechanism for a baby to the workshop in the tool area. As you can see, I got some framing up, but I still got to figure out how to build the 2 soffits to cover these drainage pipes. So again, if anyone has any tips on framing, I'm happy to hear them. So anyway, at this point, I think the paint upstairs is dry, so let's go upstairs and take a look. The paint is dry and the room looks pretty good. All the edges look pretty tight, and that's a lot to be said considering that some of this drywall wasn't the best or the straightest. So for now, I'm going to say the painting is done. We're ready to move on to the next part. So from here, we'll rip up the carpet, and this is one of the more scary things because I have a feeling that the subfloor under this carpet is not in the best condition. So we'll do that now, and in our next video, we'll take a look and see what we find.